Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features the Uncanny X-Men number 335, cover dated August 1996. So the cover here by Joe Madureira, inked by Tim Townsend, features Apocalypse there in heavy shadow in the background, Ozymandias, a character who made his first appearance a few issues earlier in the title, and then a really nice team shot of the X-Men featuring Cannonball, Bishop, Cyclops looking pretty heroic there in the middle, and great action poses from Phoenix and Storm, Gambit there in the background, and a pretty good version of Feral Wolverine here in the foreground as well. And the cover caption is "From the Onslaught, an Apocalypse comes." So this marks the return of Apocalypse since Executioner's Song, and we don't really know what he's up to in this issue, but it is interesting to see him back in the comics. You never can keep a serious villain down in the Marvel Universe. One little funny detail, at least to me, is the way that the signature here of the two artists, if you weren't looking for it, you'd almost miss Madureira's signature there, Mad, and Townsend, the inker's signature, is that bit bigger and more eye-catching, takes up more space. Also, one little final detail is there's something about this signature, this combined signature, that reminds me of the Image Eye, which is a little bit cheeky from them, if that was deliberate or if it's just coincidence. So let's open this one up to the first page. So we do get a splash page here, and it's a pretty cool upshot, good spotting of blacks here, and a nice use of digital coloring effects for the flaming torch that Ozymandias is carrying here. And he makes these graven images that are expressions of what he sees in his mind. He sees what is coming in the future, and for some reason, which will become clear in subsequent months, he has carved an image of the Fantastic Four. And he is calling out here to his master, and we learned in his first appearance that his master, but also the person who cursed him to this existence of carving out the images he sees in his mind, is Apocalypse. You've at long last awakened. And note, there is a little editorial note here, important: you must read Onslaught X-Men on sale now before you even look at this issue. Yes and no, because all you get in Onslaught X-Men is a big fight, and Onslaught basically leaving the X-Mansion, taking Dark Beast in tow, whose identity is revealed, and that's pretty much it. So really you don't, and you learn that in this issue. So a good image here, almost full page image of Apocalypse emerging from a sarcophagus, an Egyptian sarcophagus. He still has some mummy bindings around him, but he's back to his full physical vigor. And of course, in true supervillain fashion, he talks about himself in the third person, saying, "After too long asleep, deep within my stronghold, once more regenerating, healing, Apocalypse lives." And his servitor Ozymandias says, "Amen to that, Lord." But once upon a time, we learn in the third person narration, the relationship between the pair, the power relationship between the pair, was otherwise, because Ozymandias was an ancient Egyptian king, and Apocalypse on Saba Nur was a slave. But as soon as Apocalypse's mutant powers manifested, that power dynamic was reversed between the pair, and the slave became the master. Down here we have our credits. So Scott Lobdell, writer; Joe Madureira, penciler; Tim Townsend, inker; Steve Buccellato and Team Booch on the digital colors; and Richard Starkings and Comicraft on the digital lettering. So Apocalypse ascends out of the tomb. He says, "It's been too long since I cast my eyes towards the heavens." And for some reason, and somehow, he knows all about what's happened with Professor X. It was revealed in Adjectiveless X-Men that Professor X is Onslaught, and in Onslaught X-Men, it's revealed that Magneto's psyche is involved in the Onslaught gestalt. It's a gestalt of Professor X's dark shadow side and Magneto's psyche too. So Onslaught says Xavier has fallen from grace. Where once there were two, Magneto and Professor X, now there is one. They stand united. They are Onslaught, teetering on the precipice between madness and omnipotence. Ironic, is it not, he asks Ozymandias, that I would spend even a fraction of my long life dedicated to destroying the defenders of the weak, those called X-Men, only to learn that left to their own devices they would more soundly defeat themselves. So where is Apocalypse? He's out in the middle of the Moroccan desert, and he continues here with his monologue. He's saying it can only mean one thing, that the Age of Wonders nears its end. So Ozymandias asks what's all that about, and Apocalypse explains the brief aberration in history when mere humans share in the glory of power beyond their ken. A time when men flew to the stars and fell to earth as gods. So that is a reference to the Fantastic Four, always taken to be the beginning of the Marvel Universe, when Reed Richards and the other three go up in the test ship and are bathed by cosmic rays and come back to Earth with their various sets of powers. When the favoured son of immortal Asgard, says Apocalypse, once more walk the earth and embrace mortals. That, of course, is Thor, the Marvel Universe version of Thor. And assemblages of heroes gathered to avenge those unable to defend themselves. And, of course, a reference to the Avengers. So, Ozymandias, his plot device role is to ask questions. Here now, how can you even know it is ending? And Apocalypse knows because of my old friend here, he says, whose very presence speaks volumes more than any words he is forbidden by his cosmic brethren to utter. He is a Watu, a watcher. He is here to bear silent witness to the end of the Age of Wonders, and all he can do is observe, as only the fittest survive. So, by my reckoning, if I'm not mistaken, one of the last times that a Watu was seen in the Uncanny X-Men title was all the way back in issue 137, the famous and seminal Death of Phoenix issue. So I'm not entirely sure whether he appeared in any other issue after that. If you know that he did, let me know in the comments. I know he shows up, of course, in X Factor issues 65 to 68, if I'm not mistaken, the ones that wrap up the story of the story of baby Nathan Christopher, where he's sent into the future in order to be healed of the techno-organic virus. But here he is in the title again, and look at that look on his face. So he certainly looks sad in terms of what is about to happen in the Marvel Universe. And all because of Onslaught. And at that moment, half a world away, speaking of the Avengers, they show up in their Quinjet, and they're flying over the ruins of Professor X's mansion, which was destroyed in the Onslaught X-Men battle. And of course, it's like, how many times now has the X-Mansion been destroyed in continuity? 6-7 times. It's getting up there to be about that number. And aboard we have Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch. So, A-list Avengers in this period of time. And Captain America asks Vision, is there anything? No, says the Vision. The Quinjet sensors are not picking up any life readings, but that's not unexpected. As mutants, the X-Men have many enemies. Some apparently know of their secret mother house, which is no doubt heavily shielded. And he's interrupted by Nate Gray, aka X-Man, a refugee from the Age of Apocalypse reality. And he's the one who contacted the Avengers for help in issue number 400. And he is able to sense that the X-Men are alive. All of them except Xavier, he says. You're saying that he's dead? Asks Scarlet Witch. No, only that he isn't here, but he was recently. That much should be obvious from the damage to the estate. So the Quinjet is setting down, And as it is, it's attacked. And Thor exclaims, Avengers assemble, we're under attack. So the Quinjet crash lands, but from a very low level of height. So it's not terribly serious, but outbounds immediately Quicksilver. And he catches the assailant before it even registers for the assailant what's happening, and it's Gambit. So, of course, you know, what was teased all the way back since issue 287 was the possibility that Gambit was the X-Traitor, but it was revealed in X-Men Onslaught that he's not, that the traitor is Professor X himself, like the least likely candidate to betray the X-Men. So Gambit here challenges Pietro and does it in a way to get under his skin by referencing his father, Magneto. This the way your Papa Magneto brought you up, Pietro. Make your introductions with your super fast fists flying everywhere. And as Pietro's responding, Bishop gets the drop on him and puts the barrel of his serious looking gun there to his head. Let him go, Quicksilver, says Bishop, or we're going to learn just how fast you are. So pretty decent tough guy dialogue there. And then the whole affair is interrupted by Iron Man. For the moment, let's concentrate on the questions at hand, okay? Like what happened here. And Scarlet Witch adds, as two of the newest members of the X-Men, you might not realize our teams have a long history of working together. And Vision says, if we're needed, the Avengers stand ready to offer assistance. But in response comes a lightning bolt, which strikes right beside the Quinjet and knocks the Avengers off the top. We've been having something of a difficult time with our friends of late, Avengers, says someone off panel. Who could it be except for Storm? If you will bear with us a moment, old friends, you will understand why you must allow Phoenix to telepathically verify your identities before we can accept your generous offer of assistance. So we get a nice anchor image here of a whole range of different X-Men. Storm looks pretty cool in that pose there, winding up to set off another blast of lightning. And finally, Feral Wolverine is in some kind of costume, and it's a kind of a it's what will I say about that costume? It's not the best looking costume ever, but you know, I don't know that it was such a great idea to have Wolverine mutate like that into that feral version. I wasn't a fan of it, but anyway, let's move on and get back to the story, because this chapter of the Onslaught saga in this issue of Uncanny X-Men, it's mostly plot driven, but there are a few character moments, such as Nate Gray here seeing Phoenix from outside, like he's in the Quinjet and he's looking out, and mistaking her for Maddie, for Madeline Pryor. After that battle with Holocaust, I was hoping the Avengers could help me. Instead, they dropped me smack in the middle of, and then he's caught by surprise. Maddie here, how is that possible? And of course, you know, it's the physical resemblance between Jean Grey, Madeline Pryor, excuse me, and the little differences between the Prime reality and the Age of Apocalypse, and what Mr. Sinister did in one versus what he did in the other. Instinctively, as the impulsive young man does everything, he reaches out with the power of his mind. Let's see, probing the minds of people who, in another time and place, might have been allies. So he recognizes that something's wrong. Captain America is very understanding and attentive to X-Man, or Nate Gray here in this issue. So I like the way that he's characterized in this. He says to him, Nate, I don't profess to be an expert on mutant abilities, but it's clear whatever you're doing is putting a strain on you. Maybe you should rest until we sort out what. And Nate demurs. He says, no, I'm supposed to be stronger than this. The astral plane is being interfered with somehow. This onslaught may be tough, but as everyone on this world seems unwilling to accept, the X-Man is tougher. So in an instant, reality seems to warp around him, it says in the third person narration, while at the same time, he pulls forth the disparate threads of memories from each of the X-Men present. With an ease that borders on frightening, he weaves those thoughts together to form a single image of the creature responsible for all the damage done here this day. And of course, that's Onslaught in this digital color effect. I don't know that this is the most effective use of the digital coloring technology. The image is a little bit obscure, a little bit muted, It could be, I think it would look better if it was a little bit more higher definition, a little clearer. But in any case, there it is. And Quicksilver is asking the question of Scarlet Witch, what does the image mean? Also, this is indicative of the fact that the dialogue is being scripted in order to clue in readers who maybe might not be familiar with the Avengers, might not be familiar with Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch or their relationship to each other. So Pietro says, but images of what, my sister? That's really shoehorned in dialogue there, because why on earth would he be addressing his own sister as my sister? But in any case, okay, complaint over. And then we get this little sequence here where everybody's got something to say regarding the image of Onslaught, and then Cyclops bops him in the back of the head with an optic blast, which interrupts the image, and he says, the being who attacked us, it calls itself Onslaught. That's a really cool upshot of Cyclops there. And he continues and says, buried somewhere in its psionic form is the man the X-Men have known and trusted for years since he brought us all together. He's Professor Charles Xavier. So people are wondering, could that be possible? And X-Man, Nate Gray, says, I've known this since the moment I encountered him on the astral plane. Charles Xavier is an evil, but he's interrupted by Wolverine. This is a nice little detail here where Wolverine bounds over the shoulder of Iron Man. Well, here's an original way to start up a free and open exchange of ideas, says Tony Stark. And Wolverine pushes Nate up. Well, he grabs him by the lapels and threatens him with his bone claws. And Captain America, finally on the ground, intervenes in order to make the peace and says, now isn't the time for this conversation, Logan. We have to concentrate on working together to defeat this onslaught. So there's a beef that will be dealt with later between the pair. And Nate is thinking to himself, how is it that on one level I feel so alone, and in a way I feel like I've come home? And of course, it's because he is the genetic son of Scott Summers and Jean Grey, which makes him different from Cable, who is the son of Scott Summers and Madeline Pryor. So Vision says here, we need clarification. The Charles Xavier we knew is a kind and gentle man. What could possibly have happened to cause this? So there's a mystery there, but we know from X-Men number 54 that it's all on account of Professor X's frustrations in recent times, and in particular how badly things are going for mutants in the world, but also that mistake he made, that moral judgment he made in shutting down Magneto's mind in X-Men, Adjectiveless X-Men number 25, is key also to the origin of Onslaught. Excuse me. Then the scene switches to Moira Island, and here we've got Excalibur assembled, and they're also wondering what to do regarding Onslaught, because they got an emergency message from Phoenix in Onslaught X-Men in that special. And Colossus, who's a member of Excalibur in this time period, or in this period of continuity, asks the question, why are we sitting around staring at each other when we should be in the States helping the others? But Moira says, 'tis because I asked Kurt to hold off deploying Excalibur just yet, Colossus, for the very same reason I requested Cyclops and Phoenix come here as quickly as they can. Charles Xavier is one of my oldest friends. Once we were more than that, they were lovers when they were young, which is why I hate to even say this, the key to defeating this onslaught may exist right here. So Kitty Pryde asks, what are you talking about? And this is Pete Wisdom, a member of Excalibur in this time period. Enough with the smoke and mirrors, MacTaggart, he says. What's the key to taking down this pillock? Because Pete Wisdom is British, so he uses that very British type expression. And so here's a little twist coming. We never wanted it to come to this, Kitty and Wisdom, but it may be time to unseal the Xavier protocols. And that is a cue for Bob Harris to hawk Excalibur issue number 100, where there's an explanation of what the Xavier protocols are. And then we pick up with Bishop, who is reviewing, and this is a good callback to Uncanny X-Men 287, and we see Joe Madureira's version of John Romita Jr.'s image of Jean on screen saying, you may have killed the X-Men, and Bishop thinking and ruminating on how he had it all wrong. He says to Gambit, I knew someone would betray the X-Men. I saw this very tape 100 years from now, but how could I have known? And Gambit says, excuse me, that it was Xavier? You couldn't. No one could. And it comes to the point now where Bishop, who's always wondered whether Remy LeBeau, whether Gambit was the X-Traitor, because 100 years in the future, there's a character called the Witness, who's reputed to be the last person to see the X-Men and who bears a likeness to Gambit if Gambit were 60 years older, had Bishop thinking that Gambit was the X-Traitor. So he comes to it now and says, I owe you an apology, Remy. So Remy bats it off and says, don't bother, mon ami. I just have one of those personalities people find suspicious. Take comfort in the small certainties, Bishop. You'll always be a raving paranoid, and I'm always going to be a charming louse. And Bishop asks him, and the Professor? I can't believe that somewhere beneath it all, the Professor ain't still a good person. So that's interesting coming from Gambit, you know, of whom there were so many suspicions regarding his past and whether he was a good person in the past, and it's the reason that Rogue has separated from him. And also there is yet to come in Uncanny X-Men 350 a dark revelation concerning Gambit's past. But it is interesting to see him making the case that somewhere beneath it all, the Professor ain't still a good person. So up in the underground section of the X-Mansion, the Situation Room, or no, actually it looks like the Danger Room, there is a meeting of the X-Men and the Avengers, and it looks like we've got Hank Pym here calling in as well on computer, and we've got Nate Gray here over in the background, so he's standing apart from everyone else. And they're assessing the situation and what to do next, and Pietro Maximoff is overwrought with emotions because he is so annoyed that his father, once again Magneto's mixed up in it all, and Scarlet Witch tells him to calm down. And Storm says, the truth of the matter is, my friends, any information we have received up until now must be considered highly suspect, since it has all been provided by Onslaught, either directly or through his actions. And then, just at that moment, X-Force arrive, or certain members of X-Force, and also with the news that Cable's not coming with them because he's off on some mysterious mission himself, and all we get in relation to that is see recent issues of Cable. Captain America, of course, he's the one focused on the fact that they need a plan, and he begins to put a plan in place. Some of us will go off in search of Magneto, who's somewhere here on Earth, while others need to warn the Fantastic Four that Xavier, and he corrects himself rather, Onslaught has taken an interest in the status of their son, that's Franklin Richards. And Cyclops adds, as near as I was able to discern from the files I saw the Professor viewing last night, Franklin Richards is not Onslaught's sole target. That's a reference to X-Men 54. Jean and I are off to Muir Island, but Domino, I'd like you and X-Force to stay here and keep an eye on the X-Man. So Nate Gray isn't happy about that, but Teresa says, look, we're friends of Cable, the man who saved you. If you doubt that, read my mind. And she also tells him comically to shut his mouth. So now everybody's splitting up with their different tasks. And this is nice because, as I said, this is mostly plot-driven chapter of the Onslaught saga, but we do get a nice little character moment here between Cyclops and Storm, where she says, "I'm worried about Cable," and she's saying it to Cyclops, who knows and understands now that Cable is his son, his and Madeline Pryor's son, and Cyclops responds, "As am I, Storm. But right now our priority is," and she interrupts and says, "Onslaught, yes, but Cable possesses psionic powers, which are perhaps second only to the Professor's." Now, I find that a little bit of a stretch. Cable is, in terms of his characterization, we had a slow reveal that he had telekinetic powers, and then that he has some psionic powers too. But I think it really is stretching it and pushing it to suggest that his psionic powers are second only to Professor X. And it seems to be like a piece of characterization that ultimately is a plot device for this ongoing Onslaught story. But anyway, in the story, that makes him a potential target, as Storm says. Something I probably wasn't thinking about because I didn't want to be... Cyclops fills in and picks up on what Storm is saying, making him a potential target. Something I probably wasn't thinking about because I didn't want to be overly protective of my son. And Storm is about to head off. And this is the nice character moment here, where Cyclops puts his hand on her shoulder and says to her, "Thank you." So that's nice. Like, it's understated, but what we're taking from that is Lobdell's working in here. Just this nice little moment between these two old friends. The fact that Storm is, looking out for Cyclops' feelings, and then he acknowledges that. And that's a call back to some characterization between them from long back in the original Claremont run as well. So then, on the outskirts of the Xavier estate, we've got Wolverine, and he's getting ready to play out a hunch he has, which is developed in Wolverine number 104. This is just an advertisement for picking up that issue. Vision is there. It's a strange juxtaposition of the android, who has some emotions, with Wolverine, who's in his feral form, overwhelmed by his emotions and feelings and instincts. And then just Vision making the point that it's a tragedy what is about to occur, that we are all going to be forced to take arms against the one man, that's Professor X, who's dedicated his entire life to the goal of bringing both races, Homo sapiens and Homo sapiens superior, together. And then we have a scene in the mansion of Iceman calling Psylocke and Archangel, or rather Angel, to give them a message from Cyclops, which is to ask them to... so Iceman is using the name Archangel for Angel. That's interesting. I wonder, is that a slip, or is it a piece of characterization, or what? In any case, ask Archangel and Psylocke to rendezvous with Jean and me at Moore Island. I'll explain everything to them there. So Psylocke and Angel or Archangel were making their way to the X-Mansion, but now they're going to divert to Moore Isle. And off they go. So this is interesting. So Warren is flying the plane, and it's like his private jet there. Okay, so cool. And then the scene switches to Manhattan, and I like the way that Madureira does this, where we start off with a bird's eye view of a Manhattan city street, then we're down at the level of a what's it called, like a storm drain grate, and then down in the tunnels beneath the city, and down again, and we have Dark Beast now revealed, and he has sworn service to Onslaught. And he says here, "I was certain it would fulfill your needs, Onslaught. It was in these same tunnels that I spent nearly 2 decades experimenting on all manner of genetic mutations. Well, no, I didn't create the Morlocks who dwelt among these tunnels. I certainly made the most of. And he's interrupted by Onslaught, who's impatient and says, "Stop, you're speaking to me as if I were a child. I'm not. I know your every thought even before you think it. Now enough noise, understood? I allowed you to join me for 2 reasons," says Onslaught. "First, I enjoyed the bravado you exhibited by trying to secrete yourself among the X-Men, all the while posing as our..." See, he slips up there. So revealing that Professor X still has some influence there in Onslaught's mind as their original comrade. "Your plan was doomed by my presence, of course, but you could not have known that. Most important, you are still alive because you assured me you could provide dark attendants to serve me. Where are they?" So Dark Beast says, "Soon, Onslaught, soon." And here is Bob Harris hawking issue 125 of X Factor. And then Onslaught continues by saying, "Yes, soon. Soon this entire planet will be mine." And we're zeroing in on his eye. "An entire race will suffer for the sins of the ignorant and the arrogance of a few. Somewhere deep in the heart of this onslaught," says the third-person narration, "Charles Francis Xavier quietly rages against the dying light of a dream." So Professor X's psyche is in there somewhere, in the mind, in the vast mind of Onslaught. And so there's some hope that maybe he'll be able to exert dominance and free himself from Onslaught. It's a psychic battle he's facing, and Professor X is the planet's number 1 psionic power. But before I close this review, I just want to say that I'm not impressed by the idea that Onslaught, who has been developed to be this huge threat to the X-Men and now to the world, is in need of dark attendants. So if you think all the way back to Dark Phoenix, and Dark Phoenix's announcement of herself as a god, was her next move to look for attendants? No. So there's something really Silver Agey and a little bit puerile about this demand for dark attendants. If Onslaught is omnipotent, if he's if not omnipotent, then at least all-powerful or extremely powerful, why does he need any attendants? Anyway, that's my small criticism of just this little sequence here and the way that the plot is going. And then there are 2 pages of letters here, and I do want to say that the letters page now has really just become another vehicle for hawking whatever issues are on sale. So current issues of Wolverine is the answer to this letter writer's question. X Factor 125 getting plugged again over here. There is a decent reference back to Uncanny X-Men Annual 4 here regarding the first encounter between Doctor Strange and the X-Men. That's not too bad. X-Men 54 being hawked. X Factor 125 being hawked again. Look at this. Look at where you have to go in order to follow the story. You've got to pick up Avengers, Fantastic Four, Wolverine, X-Man, and X-Men. It's just like your wallet is lightening with every passing week in order to keep up with this story. Bullpen bulletins. What's going on in the wider Marvel universe. More stuff about Onslaught at the end here. And then, here we go. So Onslaught is going to be the vehicle for Heroes Reborn. Or rather the catalyst for Heroes Reborn occurring. So we've got a 1-page interview here with Jim Lee on his plans for Fantastic Four. And here's really the key one that he says. He says, regarding the story that he's going to tell, it's like the Mission Impossible remake. Everyone knows what's going to happen, but half the fun is seeing how it's going to be redone. So he's not willing to give away the little changes he's going to make from the Fantastic Four's origin story. This is strange. Like the scan or the reproduction of the art here is a little bit blurred. And I don't understand why they couldn't give us a sharper view of Jim Lee's redesign of the Fantastic Four. You also get a little one-page interview with Rob Liefeld as well regarding Captain America. See another blurred image of Captain America because it's a kind of like it's a piece of promotional art that he's holding up there. A sketch there of Captain America. Key thing he says here is Cap embodies everything there is to being a hero. Cap doesn't get a paycheck for laying his life on the line. He does it because it's the right thing to do. He's the heart of a hero. So he's got that right, which is a good start for Heroes Reborn. There it is being advertised, of course. And there you go. I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on Uncanny X-Men 335. Let me know your thoughts on this issue in the comment section to the video. If you enjoyed my review and commentary, despite all my coughing, please like the video on YouTube. It really does help the channel. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.